It is another game week here in the 2023 college football season. Let's talk some NAIA football tonight from wherever you're watching. I hope that you're having a great night. If you're watching this as a replay, this hopefully will get you ready for Saturday's contest. Lots of action in the NAIA, more than 40 games going on this Saturday. We're pushing toward September the 9th. And I'll tell you what, let's do so really quickly now with our latest NAIA Football poll, as the guys over at the NAIA Football channel want to give them a shout out tonight. Hope that they're doing well, and that is a poll that is nationwide. So you get both coasts in that, places in the middle of the country, which is where I happen to be as well. And so there is your media poll. We'll keep that going across the bottom. Let's talk about games in the NAIA this week. Let's start with a non-conference matchup. How about Southeastern taking on Reinhardt? Now, I realize other than that, there are no graphics right now. So as the season goes on, we'll try to get some graphics up there too. By the way, let me know from where you happen to be watching tonight. We'll keep that scroll going on across the bottom. But Reinhardt hosting Southeastern tonight. As Reinhardt, the Eagles are 1-0 on the season. Southeastern 0-1 on the season. And Reinhardt with a 1-0 all-time record against Southeastern. Of course, two programs obviously haven't been meeting for very long. Non-conference matchup. Reinhardt won 52-22 all the way back in 2016. So it's been 7 years since these two teams have met. Might have thought they probably would have met between now and then. Reinhardt is the best winning percentage, by the way, in the NAIA all time, an 80% winning percentage in the short time that Reinhardt's had a program. It's only been around since 2013. 92-23 overall, and the Eagles have had winning seasons in all 10 years of the program's existence coming in to this year. No reason to think they're not going to right now. They do have a tough contest against Southeastern. Again, Southeastern the Fire 0-1, lost 23-22 to Division II Savannah State last week. Reinhardt coming away with a big victory over Faulkner, 36-3 last weekend. So that is the matchup. Another one, this one at Point. And Point, no one has a win yet in this contest. Thomas coming against Point. Thomas played what was classified as a scrimmage last week, took on the Georgia Warhawks, a prep school. Thomas came away with a 34-6 victory in Coach Mitchen's first game as a head coach, the military transition program. You have to love that. Cheering for Thomas just because of what this program means. The Nighthawks, they're going to play their first official game on Saturday, and they have to go to Point to do it. Point 0-2 right now, and Point needs to put some points on the board. Been outscored 114-23 in losses to Bethel of Tennessee and also to Division II Valdosta State. Obviously, neither of those two teams are any slouch teams, and so Point's going to have a little bit different opportunity here, but we don't know what they're going to face exactly with Thomas. So this one should be a fun one. It's one of the early games, fun one to watch. Clark 0-2, traveling to Baker, and the Wildcats have one win in the one game they played this year. Beat Peru State 36-17 last week. Clark lost to Benedictine 63-14 last week. Fifth season in program history for Clark. They're coming along, and this was a big one last year. I don't know if you recall this or not. You have to say this is an upset. I know Baker didn't have a season really that it was down a little bit. The Wildcats were down a little bit last season. Clark comes away with a 20-19 victory for the first win against Baker in that series history. And so there was a big win last year for Clark. You have to know the Wildcats want to get the win back. They'll be playing at home on Saturday. Taylor, 1-1 now on the year after having lost to Concordia last week. And Taylor's lost 4 of its last 5. Lost 54-14 last week to Concordia. On the road at Division I, Butler. Butler is 0-1 on the season. Lost to Montana last week. But Butler is 10-1 all-time against Taylor. So you have to think that this Division I program is in a good position. Let's give a shout out really quickly. Hey, Jake, how are you doing tonight? Glad you're watching. Appreciate that. Let me know again from where you are watching tonight. I have a good idea from where Jake is watching tonight. So hope things are going well across the border up into Wichita, Kansas. Kaiser and Lindsey Wilson. Okay, this one is a big one, and there are lots of reasons for this. These two teams usually reserve their matchups for the playoffs. It's going to be in the regular season this time. Lindsey Wilson, 3-0 all-time in this series. And the last time they met was the 2021 playoffs, and Lindsey Wilson came away with a 54-12 victory in that one. Oh, East Wichita. I want to make sure that that's properly said there. Lots of places around Wichita. I've been up there, Jake, a number of times. Next time I come up there, by the way, we need to get to shake hands. Need to get to meet you face to face. A winning record in all 5 seasons for Kaiser. This is a program that's still in its youth and yet made it to the national championship game last year. Kaiser coming off a loss last week, but again, Kaiser's playing this tough schedule, Division II program, Mississippi College, but just within 3 points as the Seahawks fell to the Choctaws last week. 0-1 Kaiser on the road at Lindsey Wilson. Not picking games tonight. However, if you have some picks or something you'd like to throw out there, let me know who you think is going to win some of these ball games as well. Lindsey Wilson with a 54-14 win over St. Andrews last week, and double-digit wins in 6 of the last 7 years over St. Andrews. They made the playoffs in 8 of the last 9 years too. So these two are playoff perennials in Kaiser and Lindsey Wilson. You expect to see them in there again this year. This could be a precursor. To another playoff match like the one we saw in 2021. St. Andrews, we mentioned them, lost to Lindsey Wilson last week, and St. Andrews has lost 6 straight games. And so they need to turn things around there. On the road, they're going to have a difficult time doing it. At Bethel this Saturday. Bethel has won the only victory in this series, 42-22 back in 2021. Bethel with the 51-13 win over Point last week as well. Bethel has won 13 of its last 14 games coming into this home contest with St. Andrews. So, Jake, hey, all right. You fed 125 at last week's tailgate. When I come up there, I definitely will stop by your tailgate. We'll see if it happens this fall or not. This fall is filling up pretty quickly, and I'll tell you at the end of this broadcast where we're going to be for the next 2 Saturdays. But anyway, yeah, Jake, I would love to come and be a part of the tailgate at Friends. Been up there a number of times. We've done Midwest Sports Saturday in Wichita on the campus at Friends at Austin Adair Stadium, and we've had a great time every single time. St. Andrews at Bethel next week, or this Saturday, we talked about that. How about Missouri Baptist? The Spartans are playing in a new conference this year. They're at Grandview. Spartans already 0-1, lost to William Penn last week, and if you didn't catch that final, it was a 6-2 final. William Penn, in Mark Benavidez's debut, at home, gets a field goal in the first quarter, field goal in the third quarter, and then a high snap, really responsible for all 8 points of this game. High snap deep in their own territory. They get the team safety, does Missouri Baptist. 6-2 the final there. The Spartans are 0-1. Grandview, not really a good place to try to pick up your first win of the season. The Vikings get the win over Mid-American Nazarene last week, 24-7. And Grandview, you just keep looking at this program. We have Vince Delicio from the Varsity Sports Show on this channel occasionally, and Vince is a big Grandview fan. And why not? 10 straight playoff appearances for the Vikings, 14 straight winning seasons for the Vikings. I mean, it's going to be a tough place for Missouri Baptist to try to get their first Hart Conference win, but they're tasked with that this Saturday. So 0-1 at 1-0. This one is a big one, and this one, you could see a lot of offense here. Concordia, as the Cardinals 1-0 are on the road, taking on Olivet Nazarene, also 1-0 on the season. Concordia 4-1, the all-time record in this series, won 22-14. The Cardinals did over the Tigers back in 2019. It was the last time these two teams met. It's a crossover matchup in the Mid-States, and Concordia beat Taylor last week 54-14. Olivet Nazarene beat Madonna 55-0 last week. Concordia led by Gavin Brooks, who had 350 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. And Brandon Stewart, 3 touchdown carries on the day, had just 55 yards, but realistically, that was all he needed. And that just got things taken care of against Taylor pretty handily. Olivet Nazarene, and you look at Cameron Crouch, and I had a chance to watch him play. I got to see him in person last year at the Victory Bowl, which was held last year down at Waxahachie. It was the NCCAA postseason bowl game. Olivet Nazarene on the road took on Sagu and came away with a victory there on the road. Cool December night, and I had a chance to see Cameron Crouch play. Worth the price of admission. He was definitely a fantastic athlete, and he is a dual threat. So he had 3 passing touchdowns last week, 1 rushing touchdown last week. He was one of 4 people on the day for Olivet Nazarene to play quarterback, play in that position through at least 4 passes. All 4 players who were in the quarterback position for Olivet threw at least 4 passes on the day. 3 of them threw touchdown passes. Crouch had 3 touchdown passes on the day. So Olivet Nazarene hosting Concordia this weekend. Concordia, again, 4-1 all-time in this series. Madonna coming off a 55-0 blanking at the hands of Olivet Nazarene. Well, they're going to be on the road this week, and it doesn't get any easier because they travel to Division II Quincy. Now, Quincy had a loss last week as well, but it was a heartbreaker. They lost to Shadron. The Hawks lost to Shadron State 35-34 in overtime. Quincy, however, and you want to talk about a schedule anomaly, and we're talking NAIA football mainly tonight, but we cover a lot of NAIA and Division II here on the channel. Quincy, a Division II team, is playing its first 5 games of the season at home. Have you ever seen that before in, well, really any level of football? I mean, 5 consecutive games at home. And something else on that Quincy schedule, too, and you know that this is a Hawks team playing the Great Lakes Valley Conference. They're trying to get a couple more games in. One of them this week against Madonna. Next week, they host Fort Lauderdale. And Fort Lauderdale, a program that's still in its infancy stages, at young stages going along. That's an opportunity for Quincy to pick up a couple of wins. Madonna has a lot to do here. And the Crusaders, by the way, 25 games all time for the Madonna Crusaders. If you're a fan, more power to you, and we want to cheer on those Crusaders. If you're looking on from the outside and you say, wow, this is a young program, they really haven't been around that long, you're exactly right. They played just 25 games in program history. 1-24 all time are the Crusaders, and that one win was a forfeit. So got that over Trinity International. By the way, Trinity International not playing sports at all this year. One of those teams that shut the doors after the last season. Hate that for these schools, for that, the way that happens. Not only for the fans, it's a big deal. For the athletes, they have to find somewhere else to go. Coaches are suddenly out of work, and a number of coaches found opportunities, but not all did. And so that's a tough deal, though. Madonna at Quincy. How about this one? Let's get back to some teams that have not lost yet. Something has to give game. And Morningside is on the road at Hastings. Well, I think just in recent history, the odds would always favor Morningside. Just 1-0 on the year, as Morningside beat Benedictine back in week 0, a 20-17 win. And Morningside, if you're scoring at home, 68th consecutive regular season victory for the Mustangs. How about that? 68th consecutive regular season victory for the Morningside Mustangs. During this time, not counting the one game this year, 5 previous seasons, 3 national championships over that 5-year stretch. Want to make a push this year, and why not? They've got Cash Parker as the starting quarterback last week. He had 132 passing yards. And then Lennox Brown came in, played some time at quarterback as well, had 124 rushing yards. So they're able to find, Coach Ryan is able to find whatever he needs from a quarterback. He has enough players in there to fill that position. We'll see how this develops over the course of the season. And we may see a little bit more about this at Hastings on Saturday. Hastings with the victory over Dakota Wesleyan 24-17 last week. And so as the quarterback battle matches continues, I don't know, I want to call it battle. I want to call it competition. Someone may step up to the fore here, and maybe that person steps up here in this week 2 matchup with Morningside at Hastings. Morningside, by the way, this is the 22nd meeting between these two programs. Morningside has the advantage, as you might imagine, 19-2 all time in this series, winning last season over Hastings 70-17. So there you go. I want to say thanks to everyone watching tonight, by the way. Please let me know from where you are watching. We have one viewer from East Wichita, maybe some more out there. Please don't forget to continue to enjoy the videos here on Midwest Sports Net. We talk about small college sports and more throughout the Midwest and beyond. We're talking NAIA football tonight, looking at week 2. Let's stay in the GPAC. Dakota Wesleyan, we mentioned, lost to Hastings last week, 24-17. 1-1 on the road at Doane, and the Tigers are yet to pick up a victory. Non-conference matchup to get started, and then took on a very tough Dordt team last week. Doane had 5 fumble recoveries over a 2-game stretch. Dordt, by the way, picked off 5 interceptions last week. 2 of them returned for touchdowns. Dordt with a 49-7 victory at home over Doane. And so Doane trying to recover and get things back into the way that they've wanted it to go this year, struggling in the early going. This is the 38th meeting between these two programs. Doane does have the advantage, 23-13-1, and won last season 16-13. So Dakota Wesleyan trying to pick up its second game of the year. You want to stay with the GPAC? Let's stay with the GPAC. Concordia lost in week 1 at home, I know, but they took on Morningside. That's always a tough season opener. Fell 48-35. That was Northwestern, to the number 1 team in the country. Always a tough opener as well. When you have to host the number 1 team in the country, and Concordia did against Northwestern, 48-35, the score there. Concordia 0-1. They're on the road this week at Jamestown. The Bulldogs have won 4 of 5 all-time in this series, and last year won it 30-15 in Seward, playing this time in Jamestown. Concordia led by DJ McGarvey. We talked about him during the summer, warranted mention because of his play, and specifically in GPAC play. He put up so many yards last year, and this was a conference that last season, of course, had Jalen Gramstad, great dual threat, and we'll talk about Northwestern a little bit more, and Joe Dolenchek, a number of other solid quarterbacks. McGarvey's name right up there had to be at the top in passing, and he starts off the 23 season pretty much where he left off, 413 passing yards. Now, it's just one contest, so that average is going to feel like it's a little bit skewed, but it does lead the NAI. 413 passing yards, 3 touchdowns last week against a very tough Northwestern defense. Concordia put 35 points on the board. Now, Jamestown lost to Midland last week, 38-17 in its first conference game, lost the paint bucket game to Valley City State early on. So one of these two teams is going to pick up a much-needed win on Saturday. This one's at Jamestown. St. Francis taking on St. Francis. No, this is not an intra-squad scrimmage, but it's that crossover matchup that you look forward to every so often in the Mid-States. It was played last season as well. St. Francis of Indiana taking on St. Francis of Illinois. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take a drink here. Always water. Always water. St. Francis of Indiana last week lost 45-28 to St. Xavier, and the 2017 champions, St. Francis of Indiana, haven't made the playoffs since 2019, so its program needs to get a win. They lost last week. St. Francis of Illinois, oh my goodness, 63-7 last week, the win over Waldorf. And if you haven't heard about this game, you need to hear about it, because tumulty. You have Sam, Scott, Joey, all three, and they're brothers, by the way. All three scored touchdowns to open the game, each one with a touchdown. And I saw it on Twitter somewhere. Someone had posted this. I don't know this. I can't imagine this has happened. Has there ever been a game, a college football game, in which 3 brothers have scored the first 3 touchdowns of the game? What are the only 3 touchdowns of the game? They went and scored 9, 63-7, obliterated Waldorf. Well, they're at home this time, so the fans are going to get to see them take on St. Francis of Indiana. By the way, these two teams have met 6 times before, and Indiana winning all 6 times, including 52-14 in the season opener last season. So be listening and be watching for the name Tumulty, because you're going to be hearing it a lot more from this St. Francis team. Go back to the GPAC for a moment. Briarcliff is 0-2 right now. Midland 2-0. It's the 21st meeting between these two programs, and the Warriors have a 15-5 advantage, including winning 56-21 last season. Briarcliff. It's not that hard. Lost last week 40-14 to Mount Marty. And Midland, with the game we talked about a little bit earlier, 38-17 winners over Jamestown. Midland's had 7 straight winning seasons. Now, we're still talking GPAC play here. We have one more contest to go on there. I want to stress how big a deal that is to have a winning season 7 consecutive years in the Great Plains Athletic Conference. It's huge. It's huge. And so to say that for Midland, a really big deal program doing well there. trying to pick up win number 3 on the 23 season and have the opportunity against a Chargers team at home. One more. Mount Marty, we said they won. They're 2-0 right now. Dort, already talked about that win, 49-7 over Doane. Both teams undefeated. Mount Marty is 2-0 all-time in this series, having won last year 20-7. Dort has a strong defense, and it showed out last week. 5 picked off passes, 2 defensive touchdowns. We'll see how this plays out. This one at Dort. All right, let's move on. Dickinson State playing out of conference again, and you're going to see this a lot with the North Star. The North Star is down to just 5 teams. So there are going to have to be some adjustments that take place with the North Star Conference. I wouldn't be surprised. And now we're not being prescient here, but I would not be surprised because of the proximity of the conference to look west and see what you could do with the Frontier Conference football-wise. And we realize Frontier Conference has not only Frontier Conference teams in it, it has Cascade Conference teams in it. This is from the football perspective. Cascade Conference teams in there, Frontier Conference teams in there. One from the Golden State Conference in Arizona Christian, now part of the Frontier Conference. I would not be surprised at all in this 9-team football conference to look over to its east a little bit. North Star, 5 teams there, maybe looking west a little bit and say, hey, you know what? If the Heart's going to have 14 football teams in 2024, maybe, just maybe, we could have 14 teams as well. So just something to think about. I'm sure the folks who are in charge of all this, they're way ahead of this in the game. I'm just pitching this as an idea. So think about that as something that could happen. Let's go back to football. Let's go back to actually what's happening this weekend. Dickinson State 1-1 at Division III Wisconsin Stout. Stout beat NAIA St. Ambrose last week 35-7. So it's the Blue Devils taking on the Blue Hawks in the first ever meeting of Dickinson State and Wisconsin Stout. Blue Hawks, by the way, 41-18 victors over Mayville State. Siena Heights and Roosevelt, as the Lakers are moving to Division II. They actually completed the first year of the Division II transition, and so this is the last season with NAIA play. So Roosevelt moving on. Siena Heights with one more opportunity to get a victory here, as Siena Heights has won all 8 prior meetings, including a 6-0 victory back in 2019. Roosevelt lost last week to the Division III champs North Central 41-7. This one is another big one. How about this one? Intersectional matchup on the road in Montana as St. Thomas crosses the Mississippi River for the first time for a contest, and they go all the way to Carroll to play this game. Big, big matchup. It's not the only intersectional matchup for St. Thomas this year. And for Coach Reichel's team, you have to give them a lot of credit. This is a team that was 9-2 in 2022, didn't make the playoffs. 9-2 in 2021, didn't make the playoffs. They played Stetson last week, Division I Stetson, lost 34-33 in overtime. So took a D1 program to overtime. They're going to go to Carroll. St. Thomas has had, prior to this season, just 5, actually including this season, 5 seasons. 5 seasons of football. Carroll, in and of itself, has 6. Here, I'll bring up another hand. 6 national championship teams. So this is a tough road, and St. Thomas going to have to get those boys in the airplane, fly across that Mississippi River, and get up there. This is one, if you are a college football fan, I mean, if you're an NAIA fan, you want to watch this game. If you're a college football fan, you want to keep tabs on this game. It could have implications across the board for the Frontier Conference, but also for the Sun Conference as well, and I think for the playoff picture. Playoffs have expanded. 20 teams making the playoffs this year. You could see both of these teams in the playoffs. This could be a precursor. We'll see what happens. I said St. Thomas lost to Stetson last week. Carroll beat Montana Tech last week, 21-19, and this one could be a very, very good matchup. I'm going to be following this along. St. Ambrose, I talked about the Bees just a little bit earlier, 0-1, lost last week to a D3 opponent. They're going to be taking on, why not, a D2 opponent this week. If you lost to a D3 opponent, take on a D2 opponent. That sounds like the Kaiser School of Scheduling right there. They are on the road at Upper Iowa, but St. Ambrose, in the 4 times these two teams have met, has won 3 of these matchups, including winning 68-7 back in 1985. Yeah, I know you have to go back a little bit. I was actually in junior high back then. Just saying. And we called it junior high. We didn't call it middle school. I don't know if you're keeping up with that. If you're scoring at home, or even if you're not. Upper Iowa lost to Concordia St. Paul last week. St. Ambrose lost last week. Someone picks up a win this Saturday. Let's go back to the Frontier Conference for a couple of matchups here. Montana Western with a victory over Eastern Oregon last week, 38-14. College of Idaho has won twice now, including last week's victory over Southern Oregon, 42-16. It's the 16th meeting all-time between these two schools, with Montana Western winning last year 40-35 and owning the 9-6 all-time advantage between the schools, both undefeated at the moment. Something has to give. Eastern Oregon lost last week. We talked about that to Montana Western, and taking on Division III Whitworth. It's the first real contest for Whitworth, scrimmaged last week. This is an interesting series, by the way. It's tied 16-16-2. So this is meeting number 35 between these two schools. You have to go back a little bit. It's been a few years since they've met, but that's going to take place, and it'll be there at Eastern Oregon. Let's go back across the country and talk about a non-conference game. Now, it wasn't before. Pikeville, though, moved out of the Mid-South. Pikeville went over the Appalachian, 1-1 last week. The Bears lost to Cumberland's 27-20. Georgetown, there's no question, the win last week, 78-0 over Kentucky Christian. Just an absolute beatdown of the Knights. And Georgetown, these two teams have met 20 times overall. Georgetown having won 18 of them, including a 40-20 victory last year. And for Coach Oliver's team, they start off with a 78-point plus and a blanking on top of that. So that one could be a big one, and it is at home for the Tigers. Dakota State at Waldorf, back to the North Star Conference, as it still is the North Star Conference football-wise. Dakota State 0-2 after losing to Wisconsin lacrosse last week. And you have to hand it to the Trojans, though. Season of 500 or better each of the last 6 years. And that's tough to do in a conference in which you have to play Dickinson State not once, but sometimes twice. So pretty strong there for Dakota State, 0-2 right now. Waldorf lost 63-7. We talked about that St. Francis blanking and what the Tumulty brothers did. And by the way, we'll talk about more about St. Francis. It's not just the Tumulty, but when you put on that kind of offensive display, I mean, you know that we have to talk about that a little bit. So Waldorf 8-7 all time in this matchup, and the teams split games in 2022, each one winning a contest. It's that double round robin type that was going on, and so Dakota State and Waldorf played each other twice last year, playing this year to start things off here in week 2. Fort Lauderdale 0-1 on the year. Warner, the Royals, 1-0 on the year, took down Division III Brevard last week, or Brevard, 29-23. St. Thomas beat Fort Lauderdale 70-14. And since reinstating the program, this will be game number 20 for the Fort Lauderdale Eagles. So far, since the reinstatement, not so much, 0-19. So Fort Lauderdale needs to pick up a win, trying to do so on the road at Warner. Let's talk about a top 5 team. And, of course, if you've seen it on the scroll down there at the bottom there, the NAIA Football poll, Indiana Wesleyan in the top 5. And the Wildcats are 1-0 already, defeating Lawrence Tech a couple of weeks ago, 56-7. Indiana Wesleyan had the bye week last week. This time they're going to they need the bye week because they're going to take on Valparaiso. Division I Valparaiso. These two teams have met twice each of the last 2 years. 1-1. Valparaiso won last season 20-17, and Valpo lost last week to Youngstown State. So Valparaiso coming in 0-1, Indiana Wesleyan coming in 1-0. And in Coach Rohde's first season, you have to think this is a team that is in a position to make another deep playoff run. NAIA semifinals last week. By the way, this is something I want to mention. Xander Stokes, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago as we were doing our top 5 performances, going around beyond the 5 and all that. And we mentioned that Stokes had 3 touchdowns. That's what the box score said. And we were informed he did actually have 4 touchdowns. Now, I waited because it didn't change overnight. It has been changed. 4 touchdowns for Xander Stokes. So he's officially been credited with 4 touchdowns. Now, I know that the person who was commenting had the last name Stokes too, but I'm just saying he was right. St. Xavier on the road at Marion, a pair of 1-0 teams. St. Xavier leads this series 10-5 all time, but Marion won last year 41-7 and has won 2 straight in these matchups. St. Xavier beat St. Francis of Indiana 45-28. Marion beat Judson in its season opener 40-6. Cumberland, the Cumberlands 2-0 right now, and they're on the road at Union, 1-1, 37th matchup between these two, with Union having won 25 of 36 previous matchups, including a 38 victory over Cumberland's last season. By the way, this is a team in in Cumberland's that has won 4 straight times. And Cumberland's, did I say Union was 25-11? It's Cumberland's that's 25-11 all time. Cumberland's won in 2019 98-0. I know some folks for Union were probably trying to say we'd like to forget about that. No, we're going to remind you here. And next year when you play them, we'll probably remind you again. Union lost to Division II Virginia Wise last week, 48-0. So Union trying to get things straightened out, 1-1 in the year. Campbellsville, 0-2. Kentucky Christian, 0-2. Campbellsville 6-1 all time in this series, including a 35-27 win the last time they played, which was 2018. And Campbellsville, led by Jagger Gillis, and Gillis is second in the NAIA right now. He's averaging 357 passing yards per game, 66.7 completion percentage. He's thrown 6 touchdown passes, and yet Campbellsville is 0-2 right now. And this is a team that needs to pick up a victory. They have an opportunity on the road at Kentucky Christian, a pair of 0-2 teams. Kentucky Christian, as we mentioned, just absolutely sent back home 76-0 last week against Georgetown. And the Knights, by the way, it wasn't just Georgetown. The Knights have been outscored 120-0 in 2 games so far this season. Not starting out strong for Kentucky Christian. Let's go back west again. We'll head back to the middle of the country. Montana Tech 0-1 taking on Division II Central Washington 0-1. First ever meeting between the two. Montana Tech lost to Carroll 21-19. And that was last Thursday, a non-conference game between the two in the Copper game. It will be a conference game when they meet in the season finale. Central Washington lost to Weber State 35-10 last week. Avila on the road at Friends. Let's talk about some KCAC games, and we'll be giving you a few of those matchups sporadically through here. Had a video about the KCAC and specifically the Kessinger division. If you haven't seen that video, I'd say go right here or go right here to click the little thing, but I have no idea how to make that little window come up for you to click it, so don't worry about it. But it is on the YouTube site, so please check that out. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, and we're growing, and we want to grow and continue to cover small college sports, specifically tonight in NAIA football. Where were we? We were talking about the KCAC. Avila 1-1 at Friends. Friends in the Kessinger division, so you know there's a very good chance it's a team that's 2-0 right now. Avila's 5-0 all time in this series. 5-0 all time in this series. The Falcons are trending upward and continue to trend upward. This is an opportunity. Avila won 42-26 last season. Big time opportunity. Avila lost last week to Southwestern 49-41. Rallied furiously in the fourth quarter. Not quite enough. The 30-point lead for the Builders was enough. Friends with a 49-20 win last week over Ottawa. And the Falcons have scored 113 points this season in 2 games. So keep that in mind. Big game for Friends. Big game for Friends. Mid-America Nazarene on the road at Peru State, wanting to turn things around after the loss against Benedictine. A heart crossover matchup. Peru State has the Bobcats at 0-2 in this season, but the Bobcats own a 6-5 all-time series record over Mid-America Nazarene, even though the Pioneers won 21-19 last season. Mid-America Nazarene lost 24-7 to Grandview last week at home, and Peru State lost to Baker 38-17. So we'll see who's able to pick that up in Peru this week. Oklahoma Panhandle State Well, started off with a loss last week, a big loss to Division II Southwest Baptist. And that was a tough one, 65-7 last week. Wayland Baptist at home in this one, hosting the Aggies. Wayland Baptist gets the victory. And they won over North American, did the Pioneers 50-14. So Aggies on the road at Pioneers. This is the 12th meeting between these two schools, and Oklahoma Panhandle State has won 9 of the previous 11, including a 38-10 victory last year. So big one on hand for the Sooner Athletic Conference. Let's talk about the number one team in the country. Number one team in the country, 1-0 Northwestern. Going out of conference and going out of affiliation on this one, taking on Division I Drake. 6th time these two teams have met. 3-2 all time. You have to go back a ways to get the last time these two teams met. Drake won 27-20 in this series. The home team won each game in this matchup. So actually, that should read that it's 2-1 all time with Drake. There we go. Sorry, I was looking at my notes wrong, so I had a typo there. Drake is 2-1 all time in this series. They played each other 3 times from 1995 to 1997. The last time these two teams met, and Drake won 27-20. The home team won each time. So when it was in Des Moines, Drake won. When it was in Orange City, Northwestern won. Last week, Northwestern beat Concordia 48-35. And Connor McQuillan, 252 rushing yards in that game. He's now crossed the 2,500-yard mark in rushing for his career. 252 yards rushing last week. Drake lost to North Dakota 55-7. Northwestern on the road. This could be a statement game for the Red Raiders. Back to the KCAC. As we mentioned, we've sprinkled some KCAC games through here. Sterling 0-2 on the road at Evangel, the newcomer to the league. First ever meeting between the two. Sterling lost to McPherson last week. Heartbreaker of the game for the Warriors, too. They were up 31-20 in the fourth quarter. McPherson comes back with 2 big touchdowns and comes away with a victory. And McPherson now 2-0, by the way. Evangel 2-0, beat Tabor 14-7. Evangel's defense, of all the teams in the country that have played more than one game, they have to play more than one game. Now, I realize if you look at the stats, there are teams that have shutouts, that's fine. But for the teams that played more than one, at least 2 games, Evangel's defense is at the top, having given up just 7 points a game, and literally 7 points to both Tabor and Kansas Wesleyan. So Evangel at home in Springfield for this one. First ever meeting between the two. Back to the Heart, Benedictine 1-1 at Graceland. This is a bigger game, I believe, than what you might have thought when you look at it. Maybe you look at it during the summer and say, okay, well, Benedictine, if they struggle against Morningside, they have an opportunity to come back. They beat Clark, which is something that Benedictine has been known to do, and they did last week, 63-14. Yeah, they're going up against Graceland. I don't know. Wouldn't write off the Yellow Jackets too quickly on this one. There will be a ton of offense, or the opportunity for a ton of offense in this game. But there's also going to be an opportunity for some defense as well. Let's look at the matchup here. Benedictine 1-1, Graceland 2-0. Benedictine's won 25 of 30 matchups all time, 25-5 all time, including a 72-32 victory last season. They've won 5 straight against Graceland. Now, listen to this. Benedictine with 5 straight victories over the Yellow Jackets, averaging 68.4 points per game in those wins. Jackson Dooley's taken over as the quarterback for the Ravens, and all he did last week was win the Hart Offensive Player of the Week. 13 for 17 passing, 78% passing, 204 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns. That's for Dooley. Well, you think, wow, that's going to be a great quarterback. Like, wait till you see the guy on the other side of the ball. How about Cade Ross, averaging 332 yards passing per game through 2 contests, and he's 4th in the NAIA in that average. Don't be fooled. He probably could have put up more last week if Coach Ross had left him in a little bit more. 9 passing touchdowns, 6 of them going to Gerald Monroe. But let's go back to 9 passing touchdowns. That leads the NAIA. Gerald Monroe, 175 yards, receiving yards per game. That's tops in the NAIA. He has 6 receiving touchdowns. That's tops in the NAIA. You think, okay, this is great. This could be a barn burner of the game. But wait, these are 2 defenses that have been able to get into the opposing backfields with impunity. Benedictine, in 2 games this year, the team has collected 7 sacks. That is number 2 in the NAIA. Why? Because Graceland's one ahead. The Yellow Jackets defense collectively has been able to get 8 sacks this season. So this one should be a fun one as well. If you have a chance to watch this game, and this will be in Lamoni, as Graceland 2-0, trying to go to 3-0 this year. That would be big, and it would be huge also to get it against a tough Benedictine team. Big matchup in the NAIA this year, this year, and it's coming up Saturday. Central Methodist 0-1, Culver Stockton 0-2. 74th meeting between these two programs. The most often played opponent for both these two programs. Why not? It's a 2-hour drive from Fayette to Canton, and that's where this is going to be. Canton just in the state of Missouri. You can look over and see, oh, there's the Mississippi River. That's great. And, oh, here's Illinois. Well, they're still in Missouri, and 74th meeting between the two. Culver Stockton won 26-7 last year, but Central Methodist has the all-time lead, 39-31-3 in the 73 previous meetings. Central Methodist lost to Graceland last week, 48-7, and Culver Stockton lost to Missouri Valley last week, 28-7. Central Methodist does get points on the board, but it's an offense that struggled last year trying to turn things around here. Here's an opportunity on the road at Culver Stockton. Stay in the heart for a little bit. Missouri Valley 1-0. William Penn 1-0. Missouri Valley beat Culver Stockton 28-7. Yep. William Penn beat Missouri Baptist 6-2. Yep. How about this for Missouri Valley? This one's a neat number. I like this. I like round numbers. Missouri Valley, game number 800 in program history. A lot of history there for Missouri Valley. That's a big one. Should be a fun matchup. We'll see if William Penn's offense comes around. We know they have a defense to be able to hold Missouri Baptist, shut them out. Back to the KCAC. Let's talk about a couple of games there in the conference. Ottawa 0-2 at Bethel, 2-0, 69th meeting between the two. Ottawa owns this record. The Braves, 50-16-2 all-time against the Threshers. However, Bethel won 50-21 in 2022 and has won 4 straight. So, Bethel on a bit of a roll in the series, beat St. Mary 45-22 last week. Ottawa lost to Friends 49-20 last week. DJ Sears, 212 yards rushing last week. That's the quarterback, 3 rushing touchdowns. He's had 7 rushing touchdowns this season. That leads the NAIA. Kansas Wesleyan at Southwestern. This one is a big matchup. These are the 2 divisional favorites respectively in the KCAC preseason polls. Kansas Wesleyan in the Bissell Division, Southwestern in the Kessinger Division. The Coyotes are 1-1 on the year. They beat Bethany 31-3 last week. The Mound Builders are 2-0 on the year. Southwestern beat Avila 49-41 last week. 70th meeting between the two schools. Southwestern owns the 37-30-2 advantage and won last year 26-20. This was in the regular season finale that Southwestern kept its hands on the conference title last year. Braden Howell for the Mound Builders, Offensive Player of the Week in the KCAC last week, 23 of 35, 351 yards passing, 4 passing touchdowns. Central Arkansas last week lost. And you say, why we care about that? Well, it's a Division I program, formerly Division II, Division I program. UCA lost on the road in Stillwater to Oklahoma State, 27-13. Not that much of a beatdown from a Big 12 program. That is what it is. Doesn't matter. Central Arkansas wants to pick up a win and has a really big opportunity to do so against Texas College. Texas College has won 1 game since 2019 and lost last week on the road at Division II Permian Basin, 96-0. Central Arkansas has a really good chance to win this week. Texas College and Steers in the first ever meeting in Conway could be a long day or a long night. Could turn into a long night for the Steers in that one. Arkansas Baptist, also a program that hasn't had much success since its inception, or since reviving the program, actually. 1-15 since reviving the program. Arkansas Baptist lost to Houston Christian last week, 66-0, on the road at Louisiana Christian this week. And the Wildcats with a big win, 34-14 over Division III East Texas Baptist last week. 1-0 on the year. The only time these two teams have met was last year. Louisiana Christian with a 48-14 victory. Coach Maddox's team is ready for 2023. And Arkansas Baptist, it could be a long day. So we'll see how that one works out as well. St. Mary 0-2, talk about could be a long day on the road at McPherson. And this has been historically a close series. McPherson 12-10 all time in this series. McPherson comes back to beat Sterling last week, rallied for the final 14 points. St. Mary lost to Bethel last week, but did put points on the board against a tough defense. 0-2 St. Mary on the road at McPherson. Sagu, as we're starting to wind down our evening, I want to say thanks to everybody for watching tonight. By the way, please do let us know from where you are watching. We would love to hear that here. Sagu, season opener. We're in week 2. Sagu just now playing the season opener, and they have to go on the road to Division III Howard Payne to do it. 10th time the two teams have met. Sagu's won 5 of the previous 9, including a 63-34 victory back in 2017. Howard Payne beat George Fox, Division III program from Oregon, last week. North American, the Stallions are going to Fort Worth to take on the Texas Wesleyan Rams, and that's where we were last week for Midwest Sports Saturday. Crowley ISD is for real. That football facility is for real. And the Rams put on a good show, beating OUAZ last week, 36-20. Rams are 1-0, North American 0-1 after the loss at Wayland Baptist. And so this is the second meeting between the two. Texas Wesleyan won 61-7 last year. Tabor, final KCAC game to talk about on the road at Bethany. Something has to give. Tabor, 0-2. Bethany, 0-2. Only Kessinger team, by the way, not to have a win yet this year. Will it happen this week? Well, they're at home, so this could be the case. Folks at Lindsborg may be enjoying this one. 55th meeting between the two. Bethany owns a 35-19 advantage, but Tabor won last year, shutting out the Swedes 35-0, and Tabor's won 3 straight. So we'll see how that one plays out. And then on the Frontier Conference front, Arizona Christian, the Firestorm, new team in the league, back at home in Arizona, and they face a team from Colorado. There's no Colorado team in the Frontier Conference, no, but there is in the RMAC. D2, Fort Lewis, coming down to Arizona Christian, returning the favor as the Firestorm were on the road up in Colorado last year. Second meeting between the two. Arizona Christian won 52-22 last season. Fort Lewis lost to William Jewell 42-6 last week. And the Skyhawks, by the way, have lost 28 consecutive games. Arizona Christian wants to make that 29 as the Firestorm lost to OUAZ 37-7 2 weeks ago. So that is a look at all of the NAIA football contests. Hope you've enjoyed sticking around. We've had some folks stick around tonight. Maybe you're watching this on the replay. I appreciate that a lot. This Saturday, Midwest Sports Saturday, we've been at NAIA games the last 2 weeks. We're going to be at Division II games the next 2 weeks, and we'll be in Durant, Oklahoma for the Southeastern Oklahoma State Savage Storm home opener against the Henderson State Reddies. That's a Great American Conference game, and we will be live at 4 o'clock, and it could be a delayed start depending upon the heat. And I mean that. It said that tomorrow in Durant, one of the weather forecasts says 114 degrees. I'm not sure I'm buying that. There is a cool front coming in, and I hope it gets there in time that it's not too absolutely brutally hot, but we'll see. So we're either live at 4 o'clock or delayed broadcast probably around 5. That is on Saturday, September 9th, as we'll be on the, we'll be on site, on location at Durant, Southeastern Oklahoma State taking on Henderson State. Thanks for watching tonight, and let me know what we can do to make this even better for you. We'll try to have some graphics in the future, a little bit more. Hope you enjoy our NAIA F-ball coverage as well, and we'll try to keep you posted on that. Don't forget Midwest Sports Saturday on Saturday, and then we'll go with our top 5 NAIA performances on Sunday night at 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Mountain, 6 o'clock Pacific, wherever you happen to fall in all there. All right. Thanks for watching tonight. Always appreciate it. Please consider liking and sharing this video and subscribe to the channel. God bless you all. Have a great night.